What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Andrew Roman Show. I'm so happy that you tuned in. I'm so happy that you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your podcast platform. Hey, today we're continuing our success story series. We've had a great roster so far, and we got many more coming. So today it is an honor interviewing a really, really close friend of mine. Someone that we'll tell the story. We'll tell the story in a little bit, but without further ado, Mr. David Alvarez, welcome to the show.
Hey, Andrew, thank you so much for having me, bro.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure. And for those that don't know what's going on, I am interviewing people like you and me who are finding success in their everyday lives and they're making a difference. So when I thought of someone, I was like, my man, David. I got to have David on. And we're going to talk more about David's story. We're going to talk about successes, some failures, and then really just everyday advice that you and me, we can apply regardless of your position, regardless if your story is like David's story or not. But I'd like to really jump into it, David, really just for the fans. I'm just kidding. For the audience, to get to know you a little bit. But tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, you got family, where you from, and what you do, man.
Absolutely. So make sure you turn on the subtitles. I'm from Mexico. And I have a wife, my wife, Marlene, and also have a daughter. Her name is Andrea. She has 4 months. And wow. It's been amazing. It's been amazing, this journey. For living, I do sales. Basically solar panels for houses and commercials.
Hey, anybody needs solar panels, we're going to put that phone number right on screen here.
Yes, sir.
So anybody who has solar panels and not get a referral, we can talk about that later. So going back to what you do. So you do sales, you do solar panels. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then how long have you been doing that?
I actually started back in March of this year. So, kind of new here.
Yeah. Okay. Kind of new, but it's part of your success story, which we're going to get to as the interview goes on. But something that I love about David is fun story. So we actually knew each other and went to the same church back in Mexico. Because I don't know if you forgot, but this boy, I'm white too, but soy mexicano de corazón. Ya sabes que ha sido muchos episodios que no he hablado español, pero ustedes saben que soy mexicano. So I'm from Mexico. And for those that didn't understand, hopefully that was proof that I am from Mexico. But we went to the same church there. And then years later, we got disconnected because my family now, we moved to the States. And then years later, we actually got reunited at our church. And that's where you and Marlene started coming. So it's a great story there. But I wanted to ask you, David, where you are right now in life, with your business, and as we're going to get later on with a little bit of your story, but did you ever imagine that you would be where you are today, like when you were young?
Not really. When I was young, I always thought I was going to travel or go somewhere else. I remember telling my mom, my grandma, be like, I'm not going to stay here in Guadalajara. I want to go somewhere else. I want to know the world. I want to go travel. But I never thought I was going to move to Dallas, Texas and stay here. I never thought I would settle here. Yeah,
never thought you would settle. And then with a little bit, let's talk about kind of your dreams and aspirations. Right now, you're in sales. From the time I've known you, you're a very motivated person. You're a go-getter. You're not afraid of tough conversations. That's why, you are doing hardcore sales,
Right.
But as a kid, did you ever imagine you'd have this type of job, or did you see yourself somewhere else? Like when it comes to jobs or?
I thought I was going to be like that guy in the back. I always thought I was going to be like just the numbers guy. I love numbers. I used to love numbers and not anymore, but they're great. And I thought I was, going to do like finances for a company or something like that, but be like behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And I never thought, because I was really shy. I used to be really shy and I didn't like to talk to people. I didn't like to be in front of anybody. Wow. I was like, don't talk to me.
And that's insane. And now that's all you do.
That's all I do, is talk to people.
I think that's hilarious that you say that, because I think many of us, and this is kind of a common theme throughout these interviews, is the amount of flexibility that one has to have in order to see success. All of us have a very limited definition of what making it means. I said that in the last interview with JT. But I wanted to ask you, really when it comes to, you mentioned you never saw yourself here. I'm like, you're not really the talking person and all that. Although he is the comedian, I'm going to say that. Maybe throughout this episode, he might think of a couple jokes. I don't know if he'll say them, but
I don't know.
He's on the spot kind of dude. So he'll definitely make you laugh if you ever get to know him. But I wanted to ask you, you mentioned you never saw yourself in this position. Was there a time when, in the last couple of years, when it was actually tough to keep moving forward? Like where, let's just say something threw a wrench in your plans, and now you never saw yourself where you are now.
Absolutely. It was actually last year when everything with COVID happens. Mm-hmm. So let's put it this way. I was working at Honda Financial Services, the guy behind the scenes, talking just to people, not really doing much. And then something happened. They hacked the company's system or something like that. And then we were like, okay, you guys need to go home and don't come back. We'll keep you updated until we fix it. And then it was a whole week, but I wasn't getting paid. So I was like, okay, it's cool, but what's going to happen? And then we figured out we were pregnant. And then I come back to work. And then like 2-3 weeks later, they fired me. They're like, thank you so much for your services. But because of COVID, we need to cut personnel. And there I was. I was in my job, knowing that my wife was pregnant. And then I was like, I need to find another job. Like, I need to provide for this family because my wife will not be able to be working once she has the baby. So I was like, where do I go? What do I do? I was looking for any type of job. I was like, I'm desperate. I need to do even something that I don't like, which was sales, like going even door knocking. I was like, I don't want to do that. But if that's what I have to do to provide for this family, that's what I'm going to do. And that's where I started. That's
kind of what you've done. And we'll get you to kind of the success that you're seeing now. But I want to focus a little bit more in those hard times, because I think that your story is a story of many, many people last year, where either many lost their jobs or all their plans got ruined with COVID and all that. If you want to share, walk us through what was going through your mind because you got a whole week of no pay, but then you got fired. What was going through as the man of the house, as the provider, like what was going through your mind?
I was thinking like, God, what am I going to do? Like my savings, they don't look great as of now. So I don't think I'm going to survive this season. As a man, you get frustrated. You get like, it kind of hurts you in your ego as a man, because you're like, man, I'm not able to provide. Like that feeling of failure, it starts to, seeking that those thoughts that are like, man, you're not good enough, bro. You're not going to make it. Those starts to try to attack you. And then I was like, well, God, if it's I know the Bible says that you always take care of your children, and also says in Psalms, that you always provide. You have never seen a righteous man beg for bread. So I'm like, God, I think I'm doing your will. I have a relationship with you. I follow you, and then I know you're going to provide. And then you don't see this immediately, but the faith starts to grow. Faith starts to grow little by little until you get there. Until you see the opening, and you see that God is actually changing the things in your heart that He needs to change before you can get to the next place. If that makes sense.
I love that. No, it does. And I think I want to focus on the last part that you mentioned. It sounds like, and this is something that we can all use, because in our moments of desperation and all that, I think we all ask God why. We all ask God why. We feel singled out. We feel like, why me in this case? And then, like you said, especially as a man, and as a provider of the home, that can be a hit, definitely. But you mentioned something at the end that you said, you trusted God. You said, God, you always provide. And that was coming, and it took a process. But you said, God first needed to work some things like in my heart before I could see it outside. Could you kind of desglosar? Sorry, that's the only word that came out. It was in Spanish. Could you unpack that a little bit of what it means for God to work some things in our heart first?
For sure. So for me, it was basically started trusting him, because the job that I used to have there in Honda, it was okay. I wasn't getting paid, the big bucks, but it was stable, great health coverage and things like that. That when you get older, you want to have, great insurance, everything like that. Those good stuff,
the adulting things right there for sure.
Yeah, And then I was like, this is a good job. I can get a great discount for an Acura or for a Honda. I have not to worry about a vehicle per se. And then I was like, okay, this is it. I'm settled here, but my trust in Him wasn't being stretched. God wasn't stretching. I feel I wasn't stretching my faith in God that He was going to keep providing for us. And also that ego, man. Like sometimes you think you're going to make it, and then you think you can do it all. But then it's like, no, man, it's not because of you, it's because of Him. So that's what it had to change in me in order for me to move forward.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable, because I think that last year was definitely for all of us a shock of it showed us how much we're not in control of. To your point, a lot of us think, oh, I'm in control of this area of my life. I got this all covered up. But in reality, COVID was not perfect vision. It was 2020, was not perfect vision. I would say it was perfect hindsight, right? At the end of 2020, we had perfect vision of who we truly are.
Exactly.
But, it makes me think, and maybe people who are listening right now, that we can kind of reflect on their own lives. If there are areas in our lives that we're kind of telling God, I got this. Don't worry about it. I don't need your help here. I might need your help in other areas, but in this area, I got you. I don't need your help, but I'll need your help whenever I do. But when I don't, I know I won't even kind of take your advice, type of thing. But to your point, it's in those moments of need that really stretches us. And I think, you went through a learning process, you went through a growing process, definitely. But would there be something like looking back to your old self? Let's just say old self, even a year ago, old self 2 years ago, 3 years ago. What would you tell yourself? Is there something that you would tell yourself that you wish you would have known then, or something you would have done differently?
Yes, absolutely. I think if I could go back and tell myself, like, it will be like, trust God more in all the areas, and also make sure you're doing your numbers right.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So by making the numbers right, meaning like make sure you follow how much you make, how much you spend, and do your budget the right way. Because to be honest with you, as a man, you are afraid sometimes of doing a budget because you're like, I don't want to do it because I might be living and spending more of what I can afford, and that hurts. It hurts to do that. And the numbers realize that you know what, I shouldn't be spending this money on this restaurant, or I shouldn't be spending money on this clothing or something like that.
Yeah.
So it hurts.
That's such a good point. I actually didn't expect you to say that, but to your point, I think many of us as a man, or just especially even as a college student or a teenager, you think budget is like for my dad. Budgeting is something like when you're 40. Like every Monday, like my dad goes through his budget, and I'm just like, that's a dad thing to do. Which I guess you're a dad now, so that's probably why.
But I wasn't there before.
There you go. So you couldn't do budgets. You weren't a dad. But that's such a great piece of advice that all of us can apply. I'll say personally,
absolutely.
I apply that, but there's also that part of mentality in my head that sometimes I'm afraid to see the budget, right? I'm afraid because I'm like, did I go over? Did I not go over? And many of us right now, you're probably thinking about your own spending and you're like, dude, I don't even want to make a budget. And you just got to suck it up, buttercup. And you got to do that budget because
you got to do it.
You got to do that budget because before you know it, if you don't, you're going to dig yourself into problems that you could have avoided a long time ago. And I'm talking like man to man, like you were saying, as you become most likely the provider of the home, you want to have your finances in order. It's interesting. I'll share this as something I recently read. About 76% of women believe that the man should pay for the first check on the date. 76%. And then 86% of men also believe that. So I'm telling y'all guys, you got to get your budget right. Because if you can't even pay for the first check on the date, you're in a bad spot. we're going to leave it there.
The same.
But I want to talk a little bit about now kind of the success that you're seeing. You mentioned you've learned to trust God slowly but surely. He started opening opportunities. Walk us through, I guess, the beginning of this year. Walk us through kind of as you saw the light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. So I was looking for jobs. Actually, one of my friends, your brother Christopher, he mentioned to me about a company, and I applied to that company. Nobody called me back, and then I was like, well, this field looks good. Seems the pay is good. It's great. So I was, you know what? Let me go ahead and look something similar. And I found this company, and then I went. And I felt like a connection. I felt like, okay, this is the place I want you to be. Like sometimes we pray, God, give us something, but sometimes we believe it's our flesh. And that's where you need to learn to differentiate. Sometimes it could be God, sometimes it could be your emotions. So you need to, learn that very well. And then I started working there. Doors start opening. I'm the only Hispanic guy who can, speak Spanish to their customers. So, they started just milking me. You're like, hey, David, I have an appointment with a Spanish person. Hey, David, can you come here? I'm like, absolutely, I will. And then basically I started doing that. For the first 2 weeks though, I saw nothing. I didn't see any success. I was, no sales, nothing. And I was like getting frustrated. I was like, God, this is really the place. I thought this is the place. And then on the third week, I started making my first sale. And then from there, it just started like a
a domino effect, right? Like a snowball effect, right? Right. Everything just started doing it. And now, I mean, you're doing multiple sales. I mean, and I don't want to quote you wrong or overhype you, but I do believe, you mentioned as of like a month ago, you were some of their top salesmen in the company.
Right.
So that's incredible, because for everyone listening, this is the guy that we just talked a couple minutes ago early in the interview. He's like, I'm not going to be the sales guy. Like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk. And usually, sales gets a bad rap, but obviously you're doing it right. It's not like a stingy salesman. Right. You're just helping people and then selling your business. But I love what you're saying right now, because you said it took time. The first 2 weeks, you didn't see anything, but at the same time, you felt like it was a good fit. So like you said, I joined the company. It felt like a good fit, but the first 2 weeks, I didn't see anything. Do you think that's kind of like a analogy of life, that even if you're doing the right thing, doesn't mean that you're going to see success right away?
Absolutely. I think so. I think that is true, because sometimes you think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like, let's say, obeying your parents, doing your homework, doing what you have to do, but sometimes you are not seeing the success that you would like to have. But if you are consistent on it, sooner or later, it's going to come. Sooner or later. And sometimes it's more soon. Sometimes it's later.
It's more later than sooner. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to hit on something that, David, he's one of the coordinators at our church, Viva Church, that we all serve at. And he actually had the chance to preach there at our church, talking a little bit about his story, a little bit of what he shared here. But one of the key things that you focused on there that I maybe want to take some time in this episode, because I don't think we've hit it too much on this podcast, is on the kind of the on the spiritual side of the blessing. We all know the grind. We all know the principles. Hey, just hit the grind, just start working hard, don't give up. But you mentioned earlier that God had you work on some things. Are there some spiritual principles that you had to apply in your own life to kind of get your finances in order?
Absolutely. So it's the biggest one, and I think the number one is that sometimes we missed in nowadays, is giving your tithe, to God. Saying that 10% apart, and then giving that to God, but do it at the beginning. Like, for example, when just to give my example, when I get paid, I put away my taxes, because, I get paid 1099. So I put away my taxes, and at that instant, I know how much money I have left. And from there, the first thing I do is get my tithe to the church. Like, I don't count with that money. Like, I don't say that money that goes to God, because it's a principle, and He will bless the rest. The other 9% that is for me, and then He will bless that, and that's how He's seen it. And also invest in the church, invest in the ministries. God will. You will never beat God. You will never give more, and God will like, okay, you beat me. I cannot give you that much back. He will bless you in so many ways, and that's the biggest thing I saw in my life. Give your tithe.
Give your tithe
before.
And that's something, like you mentioned, you weren't really doing that before, but now you've applied it. And it's a principle that we see throughout the Bible. And it's interesting because even talking about tithing makes some people uncomfortable, right? So you're probably watching this and you're like, dang, they're talking about tithing. My money's none of your beeswax. That's probably what people are saying. I don't know, man. It's between you and God. But if you read the Bible, there is that principle of tithing that is giving back to God. And if you want to learn a little bit more about it, definitely watch the preaching that David gave at our church, especially if you speak Spanish. But I want to ask, just for everyone listening right now, I think that your story is one that speaks to all of us, regardless of what area of life you're in, whether you're in high school and whether you're already a successful businessman or you're someone who just wants to strive and make a good living and provide for their family. But I wanted to ask you, what are some life lessons, and you've shared these, but what are some life lessons that you've learned, or just success lessons that you've learned throughout your last couple of years?
Absolutely. So it will be honor the people that are above you, honor them. Sometimes we don't like them. Sometimes they could be, we can feel they're mean, but sometimes we don't know why. And until you get there, sometimes you will understand the reason of why they're so strict or why they're so tough on you, or you feel like they're very tough, but sometimes it's just like, it's just discipline. We don't like discipline. I was a young boy before. I didn't like discipline, I was like, nope. But it's honor them. Like I said, do your numbers, do your budget, follow it. Like you can make just $100, maybe in a month. That's what your parents give you, $100. Hey, make sure you do the numbers and you enjoy them, and you're gonna see it's gonna last you even more. And those are the biggest principle I could say. Honor them, do your numbers, and enjoy what you can.
That's I love that, especially the honoring part, because we live in a society and a culture that does not in any way encourage honoring people. I would say it encourages the opposite, which is rebelling and questioning authority, unhealthy, because there's always a part that you don't blindly follow stuff, right?
Absolutely.
But to your point, I think if you're right now 13 years old, 14 years old, who's above you right now? It might be your parents. It might be your mom or your dad or whoever you're living with. It could be your grandparents that you're living with right now, whoever it is. Because when you learn to honor them, it sets you up, because believe it or not, folks, you're always going to have someone above you. I don't care what point. And if no one else and you're Jeff Bezos and you're one of the richest men alive, you still got God above you. So there's always one person who's going to be above you. And if you don't learn to respect and honor people who are above you now, you won't do it in the future. And right now, your parents might be nice, but your boss is going to fire you. so I'm just saying, your boss is like, hey, I ain't your daddy. Like, bye. Get. That's it.
No, right.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to work.
Flexibility.
Yeah, there's no flexibility with that. But David, I really want to thank you for taking the time to just share a little bit about your story. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I thought about your story because I said, that is a story that I think many, many people went through the beginning part of your story, meaning the crisis. But unfortunately, not many are willing to have the gut and I would say the spiritual maturity to get themselves up and put their place their trust in God, and then see the other end that you're living right now. And I'm going to ask you one last thing that I just thought about as we start closing out this podcast, because we've talked about lessons you've learned while kind of in the struggle per se, in the life lessons. But what about now? What are some things that you've learned as you've gotten more stable financially? Are there even some things that come with now having more finances and having more opportunities? Are there anything that you've learned with that?
Absolutely. So every time that you trust God and you go to, let's say, to the next level, it gives you an opportunity to bless even more somebody else. Like, so sometimes you're like, or maybe just me, maybe just a couple other people listening could be like, man, if I have this much money, I have this amount, I will be able to bless my grandmother or my grandparent, or help somebody here, or help this ministry. And you know what? Sometimes you gotta take that little step, because God may not be able to bless you because you don't even give your 10% to him. So like how he can trust you to give you more to bless the other people if you don't even do the basics.
Yeah. Wow.
So when you do the basics and then God can trust you more, you opportunities are gonna be open to you. You know, the same way everything does. And like for me, for example, I wanted to get a vehicle, and then God was like, "Here, there's an opportunity to bless this ministry." And I was like, "But my car."
But I want my car.
Yeah, I want this car. I mean, I have a car. It's fine. It works fine. I just want an upgrade. And then I was like, well, this is the opportunity. And then I just started blessing this ministry, and boom, another opportunity. You know, opportunity is going to be there to bless everybody.
I love that. I mean, you heard it here. You heard it here first, folks. You got to do the basics. So many of us want to fast forward and say, okay, when I have this money, I'm going to buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. But when you go through the real journey, meaning the journey of sometimes getting fired, and then getting a job and then not liking it and going to another job and really trusting God, you learn the lessons, which like you said, it's being faithful. It's being faithful with the basics, and then allowing God, when God blesses you, allowing him to shape anything inside that's kind of gunky and it's not ready for the blessing. And then you're going to be able to be a blessing for others. Because remember, we don't give to receive. We just give the gift.
Right.
We just give to be generous and to be a blessing to others. Mr. David Alvarez. Muchas gracias, bro. Gracias por tu tiempo. Gracias. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And folks, I hope that you took away something special from this episode. And we got a lot more lined up. So we'll see you in the next episode of The Andrew Ramon Show.